policy.
Well, it's so reckless because it's inhuman to do what he's doing, but then it's just reckless. I mean, he has no mind for economy, and I'm not an economist, but I know that if you just strip out your workforce arbitrarily and abruptly, it's going to have a negative impact on your ability to produce.
Absolutely.
Never mind all the people who are empathetic and are like, I'm going to boycott you because I don't like what you're doing, which is also happening. So it's like this reverberating effect. It's not even just the people he's targeting. It's anyone who's sympathetic, empathetic to them.
Welcome to another episode of Retraction. I'm your co-host, Antoine.
I'm your co-host, Jamie. And if you like reversing course through discourse with us, please subscribe, like, share. What else can you do? Comment,
interact. I don't know. Toast. Drink to us.
Just get the word out. Get the word out. Make a toast. You're out at dinner right now. You're going there. Just remember, toast to us.
Ching ching.
Yeah.
Or skull, as the Danes might say, or the Swedes, Nords.
We are multicultural, folks. Okay, so it is time, my friend, to revisit the free state of Florida.
Oh, it's so free.
This time,
free. It's liberty.
This is what they claim. Listen, I'm not making it up. This is their marketing.
Okay.
This is their marketing. And this time around, I want to introduce you to our audience to Ron DeSantis. You may not really know who Ron is and what exactly he is doing for that state and what he can do for you and your state if he gets elected to be president. I want everyone to know what they're in store for, his vast accomplishments in the free state of Florida.
Oh, I like this. I see where this is going. At first, I was like, "Are we really doing this? Are we gonna do his promotion for him before he?"
Oh, yeah. I want everyone to really understand this, and make their choice, make an educated decision.
Okay.
Right. So, I kind of divided all of this stuff up into different areas of interest.
I like it. All right, let's run it down. What did Ronnie Boy do for the great state of Florida?
Well, on the investment front, the state's GOP-controlled legislature has sent DeSantis a bill that gives the Florida State Board, which is run by DeSantis and two other GOP members, to move $18 billion of the state's pension fund for teachers, police, and other state employees out of traditional and stable stocks and bonds and into GOP donor-controlled high-fee, high-risk hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, and real estate firms. So Kathleen Clark, an ethics expert and professor at Washington University, said, and I quote, "From a distance, it sure looks like the pensioners are getting hurt here. It certainly seems like it raises the distinct possibility that the decisions that the pension board is making may be serving DeSantis' political interests and not the pensioners' interests." End quote. An example of what we're talking about here is Republican financier Steve Schwarzman, whose private equity firm already manages and reaps fees off of more than $800 million of Florida pension money. Or, and I don't know how to say this, Aeolus Capital Management hedge fund, which receives a $50 million commitment from the Florida Pension Fund in 2019, 4 months after DeSantis became governor. Since then, state pensioners have seen a negligible 0.7% annual return in 4 years, compared to the average annual 15.75% return for the S&P 500 index of major stocks.
Wow, that's huge. Talk about data. That's a data mic drop. I like that. I like that very much.
To add another layer of corruption onto this, Ron DeSantis is crusading against woke investments. $150 million was delivered to Blackstone Green Energy Fund 1 day before DeSantis signed a bill to block state pension money from going to companies that prioritize environmental considerations in their investments. So to restate that, a day before DeSantis pulled a political stunt to block this activity, he transferred $150 million into donor coffers. So he basically said, hey, donor, I am going to, because I'm a woke fanatic, make it illegal for the state to do business with any company that prioritizes the environment,
Yeah.
I'm
Woke
going to
activity.
transfer this money really quickly to you right before I do that so you can get it. Donor.
Therefore, avoiding an ethics committee,
Oh,
essentially.
therefore not breaking his own law. So he gets to give his donors, who happen to prioritize this because it's good for their business, he gets to give them the money and then still make good on his promise to the people by saying the government, my government, is not going to do business with any of this woke stuff. Even
Interesting.
though he did it, he just rushed it all before he signed the law.
That is really interesting. See, yeah, I was sort of concocting a story in my head where he's doing this law and then funneling money to companies that quote unquote do not support woke, and therefore helping his donor base that way. Interesting to hear that his donor base does support woke,
Mm-hmm.
and that I got to get this money to you before I enact this law. That is a real under the gun yeah type of underhandedness
It's
there.
deceitful. I mean, it's horrible.
I mean, I kind of
It's unethical.
oh yeah,
It's horrible.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I don't know how. That's again, like I'm saying, I don't know how he's getting away with any of this. Clearly, I mean, he's like on the oversight committees. To suppose like the board. I feel like the way
He's running it
Florida,
all. He's like a
yeah,
dictator down there.
it is weird. Yeah, the way Florida has organized their quote unquote state democracy, because I have to apply quotes here because this doesn't feel very democratic. Is definitely an odd choice. It is in the vein of a state that doesn't really want much power to its people, and definitely large chunks of that power then goes into their what do you call it, legislative actors, which would be the governor and these supposed boards that oversee all these things. And it could be due in part to what Disney has done to Florida, which is taking up a large swath of its real estate for its own little fiefdom, and in order not to be controlled by the state, so they run themselves. So it could just be part and parcel of something that has been long standing with the state of Florida. We don't know. I don't know the history of Florida very well, but picking up on big little breadcrumbs here, it doesn't feel like Florida has been very democratic for quite some time. I do want to go back to the pension because I don't know if you can answer this question, and it is unfair of me to ask because you're not a financier. But the way I always understood pension is that when you retire, it is a fixed amount of money that you then get based on how many years you've worked or put into the pension fund. The playing of the money, so like these pension, whatever these funds, allocating the money into more and more risky stocks and what have you. I never thought that now I don't like it because I think it's reckless and it's irresponsible. But at the end of the day, I wasn't sure if that actually affects how much money a pensioner will get when they do retire and start to pull out that pension. Does it? Do you understand the crux of that question?
So you're saying I put in X amount
Yeah.
and I expect X back
Right.
because
Let's say
people
yeah,
before me
you're
are
I
still putting in more money. Now they're investing
exactly.
to see a return. What is that return being used for? So what is
Yes.
the point, even the 0.7%?
Right.
Yes, it's not the 15.75%, but it's
Right.
still a plus.
Right. But it
And as
doesn't go
long as
to
it's not negative, it shouldn't disallow people to withdraw their
that's
funds.
exactly what I'm saying.
I
Because it
don't know. Yeah, but I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, I assume there's operating costs. Like who's doing the pensioning?
Yeah.
So if I put in $10 and I'm going to get $10 or whatever it is,
Yeah,
and I
whatever.
guess it needs to increase for inflation too. So
Yeah, it
I
does.
guess
Yeah.
it needs to have a profit aspect to it, right? Like
Uh,
there needs to be more in
Well, it didn't
than
always
is
used to
put
be done
in.
this. Well, no. Well,
Well,
it's
because who pays the administrative costs? Who's writing the check physically? Writing, mailing checks. Like who are those people? Who
well,
pays them?
yeah, but think about it. These fees didn't exist in the original like inception of the pension. All the pension was is that the company is taking a percentage of its profits and it's putting it in a savings account for people who, when they retire, to then pay them out uh X amount of dollars for how many years they put in. That's all it was. So this whole idea of riding the
I
market
do
is a
not know the
complete.
operational costs. I don't know
Yes,
if
I'm
there
saying that
is.
that's where operational costs are starting to get implemented. Is in the fees you're paying brokers and dealers to constantly trade and do all these fancy stock games in order to what I'm assuming what the way they framed it to the worker is that we're doing this so that younger workers have a greater chance of getting this pension because we're making so much money, or like we're making money on the money that we're storing, so that way we can prolong the pension to younger workers.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe pensions aren't
That's how I'm
fixed.
feeling.
Maybe if the pension fund is doing well, people get more. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't
But
have a
then
pension.
at that point? Then what's the difference between that and the 401k? That's what I'm trying to get at. Is like the 401k is already relies on the market, and if the market is a downturn when you decide to retire, you're SOL. If I never heard of a pension, a person has to be paid. There must be a bar, right? Not a ceiling, but there must be a bar where the pension has to remain solvent to pay X amount of dollars to their workers. Because that's the thing. You've heard of pensions companies going belly up and then not being able to pay that pension. And it's like a huge regulatory thing with doing that. It's like, the pensioners like
Yeah,
sue the company.
I don't know. I don't know why they are investing and where that money's going.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I know. I felt like it was an unfair question because it's not really material to the story. But so I always understood pensions as being so much more rock solid than 401ks for this very reason. I know that companies do.
But I've also heard of pension funds drying up. So,
I think that's like a huge. Like I said, it's like the government. If that happens, it's like the government comes in, and if that company declares bankruptcy, they basically divvy up assets of that company in order to pay pensioners.
I don't know. I honestly, I can't even comment. I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Going on. So
moving on.
Now on to civil rights and the continuation of DeSantis's anti-woke policies.
Right.
DeSantis has signed bills that ban gender-affirming care for minors, target drag shows, restrict discussions of personal pronouns in schools, and force people to use certain bathrooms. Now, this entire effort is cloaked in less governments and parental rights. But the question is for who? What about the rights of the parents that government is now oppressing?
Right. You're acting. Here's what's funny. You're enacting more laws under the guise of less government. That's so ridiculous. I'll let you go.
The irony's not lost of people outside of Florida, but I can't speak for the people inside.
Yeah, the people inside Florida. That's wild. A Republican president is adding more laws to your books, more oversight, more regulatory red tape that you have to go through in order to use a bathroom, in order to take out a book out of the library. There are way more things being added to your law books under the guise of liberty and a softer government, less government.
Free state, that free state of Florida. Freedom. Breathe that free air.
Yeah.
So DeSantis is, of course, selectively outsizing the rights of parents that agree with him and vote for him. That's who he is targeting here. So related, Pride organizers and a number of Florida towns have canceled their events days after DeSantis signed all of these anti-LGBTQ laws or bills into law. So a real win for DeSantis if he was looking to demoralize communities and sap revenue from his economy. Now, speaking about economies, Florida's economy, DeSantis is killing it, literally, not in a good way. He's decimating it. DeSantis's political revenge on Disney for the company opposing his Don't Say Gay bill has led to Disney to scrap plans for a new $1 billion Florida campus. And as a reminder, DeSantis's bill banned classroom lessons on sexual orientation and gender identity because he wants to keep Floridians sheltered from reality and be conditioned into the GOP's archaic view of the world. A little bit of context around what Disney was planning. Yeah. Disney was going to relocate 2,000 employees from Southern California to work in digital technology, finance, and product development. And over the next decade, Disney was going to invest an additional $17 billion and create 13,000 jobs just 20 miles outside of Walt Disney World in Orlando.
By the way, those workers were celebrating when the deal fell through because they did not want to leave Southern California for Florida.
So, I'm sure they're not too upset.
Yeah.
But
just put it out there. So
no, that's fair. So prior to this latest cancellation, DeSantis said they may have run Florida for 50 years before I got on the scene, but they don't run Florida anymore. DeSantis also
$17 billion poorer for it.
Right. and plus whatever he's shouldering now that he removed their tax exemption. Mm-hmm. But or operates their land now. So DeSantis also likes to say woke makes you go broke, which again is pretty funny. Perhaps bluster and rhyming isn't a good sound economic strategy, but apparently Disney
You think?
Disney CEO Bob Iger wasn't bluffing when he asked whether Florida wanted the firm to, and I quote, invest more, employ more people, and pay more taxes. So it's been a real butting of heads between these two. I can't imagine it's anything other than ego. But the GOP itself may be turning on DeSantis on this issue. Many have commented, with the most notable being Trump. And I quote, and I hate to quote, DeSantis is being absolutely destroyed by Disney. End quote.
Does Trump call him DeSantis? Or is there a C in there? Please tell me there's a C in his tweet.
Like the letter C?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Oh, wait. Is that because of, is DeSantis, is it DeSantis?
But
there's no C there, right?
DeSantis, because it's short for DeSanctimonious. That was the longer version.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like
you gotta,
it. I figured.
You got to track the name calling, the playground name calling.
Yeah, the playground.
It's evolved.
You know what? Here's the thing. I mean, first of all, it's not like Trump's doing it because of the love of the Floridian people. He's doing it because he doesn't want his Mar-a-Lago estates to lose value.
He's a political opponent. He wants the nomination. And DeSantis
please. Let's not pretend he's that simplistic. It's part of it is the power, but most of it is his pocket. Taking Disney out of Florida will definitely hurt the number of golf events and all those other things that happen to come to Florida because it's one less attraction. So it definitely would hurt his pocket. So that's probably what he's more concerned about.
You're right. And
what they're all concerned about.
And I actually get into that in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Go on.
So, but taking a look at Florida's transportation sector now, DeSantis now faces a boycott of his own making. After villainizing an entire segment of his state's population, Hispanic truck drivers are now threatening to refuse taking shipments into Florida in response to the governor's newly signed law that imposes harsh new penalties on undocumented immigrants in the state. DeSantis's new law invalidates out-of-state driver's licenses held by people living in the country illegally. So it would also require businesses to use E-Verify to validate if someone can legally work in the U.S. So,
I'm sorry. Who is this? Who is this E-Verify provided by? Because the government doesn't do this.
He's requiring businesses to have it that have over 25 employees.
Yeah, but
it's a state law.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, who are they? How are they doing this? Because that's what I'm saying. They can't go to a government website to say, did this person who has a driver's license, do they have a birth certificate? Or like, do they have proper credentials to be living in the United States?
I'm sure there's a process to do it. He's doing it. So I don't know if it's a third party that offers the service.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, what is this? That's exactly what I'm trying to think. Is there like a private company that is now trying to do something like that?
I'm sure there's a company that does that. It just wasn't a requirement to do it. But I mean, the impact here, and we've covered this before, is Florida's agricultural industry, which has an estimated 300,000 undocumented agricultural workers in the state. Agriculture is the state's sixth largest economic sector. Florida has even more immigrants in the tourism industry, the largest sector. The impacts of this law are just like, what is this dude doing? He's going to wipe out his agriculture. The shipping industry is saying no. Tourism is going to take a hit.
Yeah.
Anyway, economic master. But moving on to education.
Well, I want to stay there a little bit because the thing is, I just want to point this out because the Republicans are usually the party that is hardest on immigration. Again, I've got quotes up. I don't know how to do this on a podcast. One day, maybe we have to start doing videos so people can see my quotes. The Republicans are always the hardest on quotes, but the thing is, most of the industries that Republicans get their money from, which are agricultural industries, which are usually more conservative, definitely right-leaning, it's always like that cat and mouse game. In public, what is it? Freak of the sheets, lady of the streets. That's what Republicans are basically for when it comes to immigration. They in the streets are yelling about gotta be racist, gotta keep out these illegals, blah blah blah. But when it comes to legislation, they usually are quite lax because they need these people to take these jobs for next to nothing in order to make sure that these oranges keep growing. So it's always this like duality between what they're saying out like on TV, on CNN and whatever.
Which is why nothing's ever been done.
Exactly.
All you hear
exactly.
is complaining and blame
Exactly.
and all that, but nothing ever changes because of what you just said, because everyone knows that we need workers here.
Yeah. Of your slave wages, basically. We need that.
Yeah. Well, I should say, and not that we need them, but that is the way that businesses are conducting themselves. And businesses are the major donors to political campaigns. And that's how it all kind of works.
So basically, what I just wanted to hit this home. This is the only reason I stopped here. Is the reason he is getting in hot water is because he's actually putting his money where his mouth is. He's actually trying to be a Republican who is trying to stifle illegal immigrants working in this country, and his party is getting annoyed by that because he's actually trying to do it.
Yeah, what he should be doing is creating a better pathway for workers to come here, work, and return.
That's like a humanity. That's what a human being would do. That's a human policy.
Well, it's so reckless because it's inhuman to do what he's doing, but then it's just reckless. I mean, he has no mind for economy, and I'm not an economist, but I know that if you just strip out your workforce arbitrarily and abruptly, it's going to have a negative impact on your ability to produce. Absolutely. Never mind all the people who are empathetic and are like, I'm going to boycott you because I don't like what you're doing, which is also happening. So it's like this reverberating effect. It's not even just the people he's targeting. It's anyone who's sympathetic, empathetic to them is coming out. So anyway, moving on to Florida education. We mentioned before that DeSantis has banned identity discussions in school, but he also is defunding diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at public colleges throughout the state. Throughout the country, college enrollment is down already, and this is sure to further drive Florida numbers down, where populations previously classified as underrepresented minorities are now the majority in Florida. So again, DeSantis is just nailing it. Remember, keep this in mind, folks, for when he runs.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering what you were going to say. And if you like what he's doing here, he could do it for you too.
I mean, that's what the whole point of this is, because you hear a lot of big talk, you hear a lot of bluster and chest thumping and puffing out of all that of his chest. When you actually see what he's doing to his own state, and you're not going to hear it from the conservative outlets because they protect their own, but it's not good. It's just really, really not good. And Florida was already hurting. So
you hear that, Staten Island Republicans? If you like his anti-woke policies, and you don't like the Statue of Liberty, because I mean, when he becomes president, that's something that might actually go. He's like, what is that? A woman as the hallmark? Oh, maybe he'll be like, maybe the Statue of Liberty is a man in a dress that is holding up liberty. We don't know. You don't know. It never really had gender affirmation. Not exactly sure. I'm just saying, if New York City wants to lose the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty, elect Ron DeSantis as your president. If there's a landmark in your town that brings massive amounts of people as a beacon of tourism, he can make that go away. He can take the Hollywood sign, he could take that down. The Idaho potato, he could put a hole in that. He could bury that thing. He could take anything that brings people to your town. He could find a way to have it removed and put elsewhere so that people don't go where you live. They go somewhere else. He could do it all over the country.
Out of spite. And no one can talk sense.
Like out of spite.
It's the thing. It's so crazy because it's all just
too funny.
It's like spite. No one asked for this stuff.
Yeah, basically. No one asked for a war with Disney. No one wanted that. Go on.
All right. So we're talking about elections. Let's get into voting rights. Ron DeSantis' new election police unit started charging people last summer with voter fraud as part of a crackdown against felons who have allegedly broken the law by casting a ballot. However, one by one, many of the 20 arrests over the past 12 months have stumbled in court, with 6 cases being dismissed, 5 others accepted plea deals, and only 1 case went to trial and resulted in a split verdict. In the first 9 months, only 4 arrests were made. Critics say the low numbers point to the overall strength of Florida's electoral system and a lack of sufficient evidence to pursue further charges. But that doesn't seem to matter to Ron DeSantis and his culture war and this fraud unit's $3 million budget. Good job, Florida. Good job, Florida. way to waste their
Fee
time.
$3 million to create a task force
For
for
20
something
people, for
that doesn't
20
actually
people,
happen.
for
Yeah,
20 people in a year. And you didn't even get to prosecute them all because it's all nonsense.
oh my goodness. And the worst
All
part
the
about that
fraud.
kind of
And
legend,
20 people didn't tip any election. What
God
are
no,
you guys doing?
God no. But my point is the worst part about when you enact. Here's our issue. This is a bigger issue in terms of policing in America in general. If you spend money on it, you could always fall back on, well, the reason there's only 20 is because the show of force. There's only 20 because we've got a force out there making sure that people who are trying to do this aren't doing it. And they're
Except this is the
here as a
first time.
deterrence.
You
I
would
get
think
it.
that the first time people didn't know about the show of force, so you would have got a bunch of them.
You're
There's
bringing way too
nothing
much
there.
logic. You're bringing way too much logic into this fight. This fight is about illogic. And in that illogic, this is where you get to win, is you get to say, because we have this, we don't have to deal with it. And therefore, next year, we should triple this budget and get even more people out there. So that way, those 20 people never see, you won't even see, as you won't have one case if we spend $33 million. That's the logic on this one.
Listen,
Anyway.
it makes it's Floridian logic. I get it. It makes sense.
To be fair, this is not an area where Florida is the only, what do you call it? The only guilty party. That's what I'm saying.
No,
Other
but
states do this similar
Florida has
nonsense.
all of this other stuff going on.
When you put it all together, they're special. But I'm just saying that in this particular area, they aren't alone. This is something that a lot of states like to engage in. But anyway, moving on.
I mean, not really with the fraud stuff, not with the voter fraud. There's
not with the voter fraud,
no.
But in terms of appointing either policies or not policies, but departments, or giving the police more money. Like, again, we talk about this, the military surplus. No reason for police forces to have tanks. Not going to do much with it. But you get to argue, because they have tanks, we have less terrorism. The terrorists are afraid of the police force in the middle of the country, in a population of 300 people, having tanks. That's
but you also are. I mean, you do have these other socioeconomic factors, trauma, undereducated, where people are actually committing crimes, but we don't really care about, the crime. The behavior is like the capstone of a long precedent of unfortunate things that have happened to them that have brought them there. But in fact, a law was broken, and we have zero empathy for them. Right. And so you do have high incarceration rates.
Yes.
There's only 20 people.
I hear you.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no one's even breaking the law. Like, you can't even incarcerate them. There's not enough people to justify $3 million. It's just they're out of their minds. It's just absurd. And if it was anyone else doing anything, everyone would just be like, scrap it. But because he's dictator in chief down there, he gets to do whatever he wants and use the Floridians' tax dollars as petty cash.
Wow, well said. I like that.
So you have another one. All right, another one in public safety news. You'll love this. So a few weeks ago on the pod, we covered it. After DeSantis made it legal to open carry without a permit or training in the great state of Florida, making it the 26th state to do so, following the NRA's agenda and tipping our country into a majority open carry country, we can actually see the results in Florida. So let's get into the results. A man making a deposit at a drive-through ATM when another Floridian pulled up behind him in a black Cadillac. Mm-hmm. We'll call him Cadillac Man.
Okay.
So Cadillac Man begins honking his horn at the man making the deposit in the drive-through ATM.
Because he's not, this is a person who's walked up. This happens a lot, right? It's a walk-up guy.
Two cars.
Oh, sorry. It is another car. Sorry.
They're in cars.
Okay.
Going into the drive-through ATM.
All right, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Cadillac Man drives up behind the guy who's doing his thing at the ATM. Cadillac Man, he's in a rush. He's got places to be. So he honks the horn. The two men exchange words. Then Cadillac Man gets out of his Cadillac and pulls out a semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine and points it at the guy trying to make a bank deposit at the drive-through ATM. Cadillac Man then goes on to yell and curse and eventually drives away. So the police are actually still looking for Cadillac Man. If you're a listener and you know anything about this, or you're interested in providing information, you can actually check out our description in the episode, under the source list, to figure out how you can reach out to Florida police. But this is just sort of what they are fostering down there. You're just allowed when you feel like it, when you're annoyed, when you're ticked off, as at something as mundane as an ATM, to pull out your semi-automatic handgun and point it at people, because you're allowed to open carry any which way you want.
Now, is that gun legal? Was it like, is that, I mean, they
I'm
don't
sure it
know because they
is. Why
haven't
wouldn't
found
it
the
be? I
guy.
mean, AR-15s are legal. Like, why
Okay,
wouldn't
fair.
that be
Yeah, that's
legal?
fair. That's fair. I hear what you're
Right.
saying. Yeah, you're creating a climate where people become more and more trigger happy, which is all that happens. I mean, and the rare studies that have been done, but they definitely uh, point to the more you have a gun, the more likely you are to simply want to use it and therefore use it. So the having a gun does not make you less likely to want to brandish it or use it in some capacity. Anyway,
We've covered it before. If you're walking around with it for no other reason than you're allowed to, then you are waiting to use it.
that's exactly right. Exactly right.
All right. So now, last one. Last one. From a tourism perspective in the free state of Florida, the NAACP has issued a travel advisory for Florida, warning potential tourists that recent laws and policies championed by Ron DeSantis are, and I quote, openly hostile towards African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals, end quote.
Oh wow. Okay.
So Florida is one of the most popular states in the US for tourists, as you kind of pointed out before, and tourism is one of the biggest industries. More than 137.5 million tourists visited Florida last year, marking a return to pre-pandemic levels, according to Visit Florida, the state's tourism promotion agency. So tourism supports 1.6 million full-time and part-time jobs, and visitors spend $98.8 billion in Florida.
Wow.
So there you have it, folks. The free state of Florida and everything that Ron DeSantis has done for them, he can do for you and your community too. Antoine, does DeSantis get your vote in the general election?
Absolutely. Burn this mother to the ground.
Well said.
Yeah, he's pretty terrible. Pretty
I
terrible.
mean, it's
Terrible president of Florida.
what I, any one of those things can be explained away. Like, and I don't mean rightfully, but I mean spun. People can spin things.
Yeah.
Are they not aware of all of these things happening? I mean, I can't.
I don't know if he would win another election, to be fair with you, at this point. Like, I don't think that people are as happy with him within the state that would support him actually winning another election. I think that this is definitely the swan song of Ronnie Boy. I think that he's going balls to the wall because he knows that his next step is a bid for the presidency, and he doesn't really care about whether he carries. I mean, he will carry the state of Florida just because of how much their division there is in this country, and people voting at the highest level, the federal, are not going to vote for a Democrat just because they hated him as a governor. They're still going to vote for him, and he knows that. So while they would never vote for him to lead their state again, he knows that he will get their support when it comes to the federal, because that's just the way it goes. He will carry his state as far as the Republicans go. There's no doubt in my mind about that. He could be complete trash, but they will vote for him anyway. And then it's about the rest of the country knowing not all this stuff. That's why it's good for people like us, anyone out there trying to has a little voice out there to talk about these things, to bring these things up so that other voters are aware. But yeah, that's what he's counting on, his war against woke, say no to woke nonsense, and in order to continue to divide and have people that are not aware of his track record and how he has actually affected his state to vote for him in a general election for the presidency. So
Yeah, I mean, I get you. Regardless of all of this, it doesn't matter because people vote party lines, and that is an unfortunate reality that we all deal with today.
It will matter in a purple vote. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think that he's the kind of Republican that will pull people who are either undecided or people who might not always vote Republican to vote Republican. Again, will they vote Democrat? Probably not. What they'll do is they'll just stay home. They just won't vote, which depending on the election and depending on how things are shaking out, either helps one side or the other. It's a sad state of affairs. Right choice voting. Go watch that episode to learn why it's important that everyone feels empowered, and actually, when they vote, no matter whether they're voting for red or blue, they can still have a voice and make some change. But with the absence of that kind of power, empowering of our electorate, yeah, most people probably will just say, you know what, I'm sick. I can't vote for this guy, but I can't vote for the guy who's pro woke, so I'm just not going to vote at all.
Well, that is well said and fair. So you heard it here, folks. Ron DeSantis, if you want to destroy your state's investments, destroy your state's civil rights, destroy your state's economy, destroy your state's transportation, destroy your state's education, destroy your state's voting rights, destroy your state's public safety, and destroy your state's tourism, Ron DeSantis is the man for you to bring you all that freedom and more.
Well put. Well put. Jamie, where can they find us?
Folks, we have new content every week. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you listen to podcasts, as long as you're not in Florida, because we're probably banned there.
And proud. Banned and proud. With that, retraction. Oh.